Channel 7 used to be, they had these big studios out at Epping, and someone, who were you, complained about having a dog in the building in case he brought fleas to the building, right? And there was uproar in the Harry's practice office, so they went and got him cleared through security. And he had his own security pass and full access all areas, which was so hilarious.
Welcome to The Final Encore, a show exploring the life and legacy of some of Australia's most interesting characters as they step into our studio funeral parlour to reflect on their life by planning for their death. I'm your host, Sam McConkey, and with me in studio today is Dr Katrina Warren. Katrina has spent more than 3 decades as one of Australia's leading pet educators. She was, of course, the host of Totally Wild and later the co-host of Harry's Practice. Anyone older than 30 has almost certainly spent their Sunday nights with Dr. Harry, Dr. Katrina, and Toby the Wonder Dog. This will be a particularly interesting episode. We'll explore the role of pets at funerals. We'll explore why we aren't great at talking about loss and grief, both human loss and pet loss, all while planning Dr. Katrina's final farewell. Dr. Katrina, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, we're here to talk about your funeral, but before we get there, I want to start the conversation by talking about pet loss and grief. One of the goals of this show is to help us open up and have better conversations about death and dying and loss and grief and all of those things. We suck at it on the human side. We probably suck at it even more on the pet side. Why do you think that is?
We do suck at it, although I think we're getting a little bit better, and I think pet owners are getting better at it. I think the problem is there are a lot of people that have never had those tight bonds with their pets. And if you haven't had that really close relationship with an animal, then you don't understand how close someone else can be to their pet. And what happens is, and people tell me all the time, when their pet passes away, it's a lonely journey because they feel that nobody understands. And it's not made any better because a lot of people will say things like, and this happened to me with Toby. And by the way, I've got this is not Toby. Toby's been in the big kennel in the sky for a long time now. He died in 2010, but he is a chocolate border collie. This is Chili. I think, it's such a lonely journey. And people will say things like, are you going to get another one? Oh, it was just a dog. Or for some reason, they really put cats down. Oh, it's just a cat. What are they going on about? And so people then grieve behind closed doors. And my personal experience with grief over Toby and my other pets is I find, and you would know a lot more about human grief than me, but I find for me it gets a lot worse before it gets better because the days go on and on since you've seen them last and the reality sinks in, but nobody seems to check up on you. Even when Toby passed away, everyone was amazing and everyone gathered around and was really supportive and lovely, but I had to fly to LA about 5 days after he passed. And I could feel everyone was so relieved that I had something to keep me busy.
Yeah.
And it did keep me busy. And there is something in that. It really did keep me busy for those 7 weeks because I was flat out on shoots and really holding it together. But when I walked in my front door after 7 weeks away and it was empty and no pitter-patter of his feet and I still had his dog bowls there and all that, that's when I fell apart. And nobody ever asked me ever again if I was doing okay after losing Toby. And I've taken that on, and I really try very hard to check in on friends that I know, and I tell people, if you know someone who's lost their pet, check in on them a week later, a month later, offer to go for a walk with them, ask if they want to just sit with your pet for a while. Sometimes people do, sometimes they don't.
Educational moment, what would you have wanted people to do for you when you came home? The house was empty, there were no flowers, you had the pit in your stomach.
That's a good question. You're not expecting flowers. You're not expecting anything like that. I think you just want people to ask if you're doing okay and do you want to talk about Toby or some memories and is there anything they can do for you to make you feel a little happier? And I think I had a very young daughter. Charlotte was only 2 or 3 when he passed away as well. So I was really busy with that. But once she's asleep and you're sitting with the quiet, that quietness, and what a lot of people tell me too, the things that often annoy you about your pets, like it might be, like my cat drives me bonkers because at 6 a.m. he'll bang on the fridge door for food, right? He runs around banging, it drives you bonkers. But then when they're gone, that's the thing you miss the most, and it's that silence. So I think it's just offering to listen and offering to go for a walk with you or do activities with you that will help alleviate some of that loneliness.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned guilt before. I think one of the other areas of guilt is people often feel a greater sense of grief losing a pet than they do a family member. And that sort of adds to the guilt where they don't want to talk about it because they almost feel guilty internally for having a bigger reaction to losing a pet than losing a family member.
Yeah, and I see this with men a lot. Men will say to me, I felt terrible because I grieved more. You know, I was more upset about my dog dying. People feel like they have to grieve behind closed doors because it's that same thing of, oh, it's just a pet. Pet loss comes with something else as well. And that is often, not always, but often we are in a really, it can be stressful, but it can also be a privilege, the euthanasia. And euthanasia is a privilege if it's, you know, if you're not in that situation of it being a horrendous accident that's happened really quickly. But if you have that time to plan for it, but there is always guilt and questioning, is this the right time? Have I done the right thing? And the temptation of, you know, should I kept them alive longer? And a lot of people really struggle with that.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, the same way people struggle when there's, you know, accidents and sudden death and, you know, could I have done something if it's suicide, you know, that whole thing. People will have it because euthanasia is often, you know, it's a common thing with our pets. But I say that it's the ultimate privilege. It's the ultimate privilege to put them out of pain and be there for them at that last, you know, special moment of their life.
And for them to be often able to do it at home around the people that they love in a place that they love versus it's sort of happening at a vet clinic where they probably never had a great experience.
That's what's happening now. There's a big shift towards home, and there's also a shift towards, you know, we know a lot more about palliative care for pets and a lot of things that you can do in the home environment. And a lot of people don't want to plan for their pets or humans, right? Which is why we're here.
Totally.
Exactly why we're here today and why I jumped at this opportunity, because doing a little bit of planning and forward thinking, and I will often be the one that does this for my friends with their pets. So if I know that they're getting close to having the privilege of that, you know, it's the end of life is coming, you can do some beautiful things. You can make a bucket list for your pet. You can give them their best ever day. You have some kind of catch up with all the dog friends that they haven't seen. It's making me all teary thinking about it. Go to I took Toby to his favourite beach. You can plan that, and you can also, when you have the clarity, think about what you would like to do. You know, what do you want to wrap them up in? How do you want to farewell them? If you can take that time and push through and plan it, as hard as it is, when that time comes, you look back and you're really grateful that you've done it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see this with your work too. The people that have put this thought in now, it eases the pain for everyone at the time in some kind of little way.
I think particularly on the human side, you know, when you lose someone close to you, you go through this intense grief. But there's almost this Maslow's hierarchy of emotion where you can't even go through the healthy grief until you feel like you've released the burden of giving the person the farewell that they would have wanted. And when you don't know what that is, there's no plans in place. Often you're sort of so wrapped up in this uncertainty that you can't even push through to get to the healthy grief part.
And then I imagine, I'll just pop Chili Bill. I'll just lay him down. Oh, he's going off. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I have had a couple of friends pass away in horrific circumstances. One was overseas and it was a long time to get his body back and nobody knew what was happening, and you're just caught in this state in between, and you feel like you can't, it's not so much move on, but you're all stuck because you want to say goodbye. And then I've had another friend where the body was held for a long time and you were really trapped with those emotions as well. And I think I really encourage people, and particularly with children, I think it's really important with children and pets to have some kind of little ceremony. Something, it could be your friends and family come over to tell stories about your pet. You could have set up a little memorial to give children something to go, okay, the pet is not here in the physical presence, whatever your beliefs are, but your pet is now in a different state. Your pet has died. It's no longer alive. So you're clear with what's happened. And then your new life begins.
Yeah. It's a great segue. Let's get into planning your funeral. Before we get into specifics, what does a good funeral look like to you?
Gosh, the older you get, the more you go to as well. A good funeral is a celebration of life. And I think the good funerals, if you could call them that, the ones that I've been where you walk away, I feel like the person has had some input into pre-planning so that people know their wishes, they know their songs, they know I don't want people in black, I want, I've had a couple of friends pass away from cancer and they had planned it, and I've found that for me, so you want it to be a celebration and a farewell, and you want people to just remember the good parts of it. We know there's always sadness, but I want people to, have a smile and walk away with fond memories.
First question for you is music. What's the soundtrack to your funeral?
Okay, this is such an interesting process to think about and actually have to answer, and it took me a while, but all my friends, everyone who knows me, and I've already told you that I love warm weather. I love it so much. I love the moment the jasmine comes out because it's the end of winter and the start of spring. I'm a sun baby. I would follow the sun, so can't go past Here Comes the Sun, George Harrison, and the meaning of that he actually wrote that. I looked into it. He wrote that after a really bleak winter, and he had wagged a business meeting that he didn't want to go to with the Beatles, and apparently they were having all these financial dramas. He was over it. He went to Eric Clapton's house, picked up the acoustic guitar, went and sat in the garden, and this ray of sun after this horrible winter came and shone on him, and he wrote that song. It made me all tear. When I read that, I thought, that's actually me. That is so me. When it's winter, I will find a crack of sunlight everywhere, and I'm just sitting in that ray of sun.
We're recording this in late August. It's an unseasonably warm day in Sydney. Sun's out. Do you feel yourself getting happier at this time of year? Happier. I have one girlfriend, and we will message each other when the sun is out. It's a different mood. I'm definitely affected by the skies. Obviously, you'll die in summer. God forbid it happens on a cold winter's day. What is your dream funeral outside somewhere?
Somewhere with an ocean view would be nice, I think. So ideally with the sun and the ocean and flowers. And I want it to be happy vibes. So yes, my worst nightmare, and everyone would have to make a joke of it, was a grey, rainy day, cold day. And no, none of this black mourning, definitely colour, bright. And I do think that helps lift people's spirits as well.
Speaking of bright and colour, you've told me you've already planned out your your coffin decorations. What's the plan there?
I can't say I've planned out the decorations, but this exercise made me think about it, and I just want a happy coffin. I want, whether it's a beach scene with palm trees and, the sun shining, but a happy coffin. I've been to a couple of funerals. I think this is becoming more and more of a thing, and you would know this too, personalised coffins. They don't need to be expensive. They're doing a job, right? They are doing a job. And so if that job can reflect something about your life, instead of us all looking at these traditional bleak coffins, for me personally, that's what I want.
Rarely is someone's most reflective thing about them the mahoganyness or the gold handleness of the coffin. And so the more personalised, the better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, gosh, I'd be happy. Everyone could paint it if they wanted, put farm animals on it, do whatever they want to do,
Love that.
But people find that weird. I have actually been to a funeral last year where we were asked to write on the coffin, and a lot of people really couldn't.
Interesting.
And then I thought, well, maybe do we really need the coffin there? Does that help people? Does it really help? Or is it just better to have a celebration?
It's an interesting question. Like, we're certainly seeing more and more that the coffin being there sort of makes it about death kind of naturally by virtue of it being sort of put in front of your face. Often we're seeing people want either their ashes to replace the coffin or nothing at all, because by removing the sort of obviousness of the death, you can focus the ceremony more on life rather than death.
Yeah, and celebration, photo walls or whatever, and you want it to be, I guess, for my daughter as well. So my daughter's just turned 17, and so you want her to be able to take out happy memories from it. The last thing I want is for people to see me in a mahogany coffin. We don't need that anymore.
Next question is food. Katrina, what's on the menu?
That's tricky. Okay, I don't eat animals, so it would have to be, and I appreciate that other people do, but that's my act of kindness in my death would be to not have any animal based food there, so be vegetarian or vegan either. But then I was thinking I would probably like to do something quite fun, and do something like cupcakes, personalised cupcakes with funny, photos, favourite photos from the years of us doing, me and my friends doing silly fancy dress, or just funny photos or funny images of my face on cupcakes so that everyone has a laugh.
Is the dress code fancy dress?
No, because a lot of people don't like fancy dress. I quite like a fancy dress, and some of the funniest times I've had have been, we all have, right? Fancy dress parties over the years. But no, I wouldn't do that because I think a lot of people have a hate of any kind of dress up. So the theme would just be don't wear black.
Certainly would control perhaps the numbers if you made it fancy dress, polarising at best.
Yeah, no, just be happy and colourful.
Okay, food sorted, music sorted, dress code sorted. Move on to the effigy. At some point in the funeral, at some place in the funeral parlour, there'll be a table reflecting the things that matter to you, the moments that defined you. What are the things you'd want on that table?
Look, it's really hard, isn't it? Because I've got my beautiful daughter, obviously, so some memories and photos of us and our life together. People that know me will know that my relationship with Toby was so special, but I think so much of that was he was the dog of the time that was going through not just me kind of growing up, but also my career, and life was simpler and media was simpler and people knew him. So it would definitely be some of my Toby mementos. I've brought this is a little treasure. This is the one. And I did a post on my social media a while ago just saying, do I keep this or what do I do with it? And everyone's like, keep it. But I'm dragging it around with me, and it's...
What's in it, Katrina? Open it up, show us some of the items.
Well, this was Toby's little suitcase. We used, on Harry's practice, whenever we do a travel story or a filming, I'd turn up with his little suitcase. So we'd put in it whatever the props were for the day, right? And we'd do this wheeled all around the country with Toby's his little Barbie suitcase it was at the time, but Toby's. And it's just pretty much kept the same, right? That was his little tuxedo that whenever we did any fancy events, I know, it's so cute. This was his Channel 7, like 1999. So what happened then was Channel 7 used to be, they had these big studios out at Epping, and someone, who were you, complained about having a dog in the building in case he brought fleas to the building, right? And there was uproar in the Harry's practice office, so they went and got him cleared through security. And he had his own security pass and full access all areas, which was so hilarious. The all-time favourite toy, that was the one that went on, that's in half our videos. And you know what's so interesting is there's now so many dog toys. Back then there was... hardly any, right? But this is still available, and his tug mutt. And hilariously, he had this since he was a puppy, and I'd take that on shoots to get him to do the head tilt, border collie head tilt. And hello, Chili. My first ever book, Wonder Dog. I know, 99 Wonder Dog Tricks and Training, and of course his little puppy photo. Oh my gosh. That without a doubt was such an amazing time of life. Yeah. It was so much simpler. There was no social media. I had somehow created this dream job. So there weren't 500,000 different vets on TikTok and pet pages and border collie accounts. There weren't those things. There was really just Harry's practice and a couple of other shows, So I was so blessed that I got this opportunity to educate people about pets and do what I loved. So when I reflect back, it makes me feel old. But it's a part of life. It makes me I yearn for those days of just sort of freedom and youth and being so excited by it all. And then I look back and think, well, how lucky I was. And I meet people all the time that said that, like you, that said they grew up watching the show.
Totally.
Lots of dogs. Lots of people tell me their dog was named Toby and he lives on. I get sad sometimes because I miss that community. The way you get community now is very different because you are very, very... what's the word with social media? You're very in front of people. Yeah. There's no barrier. Yeah. Back in my days, if people wanted to contact you, had to go through Channel 7 and you felt a lot safer and you weren't attacked. They had to write a letter if they wanted to complain about what you were wearing. I don't like the way everything has evolved where people just tear people down. and that social media platform where it's such a platform for good, but that side of it's really horrible.
We're going to get into some of your impact and legacy in a second, but before we leave Toby, one thing I didn't know until we spoke earlier in the week was Toby was never planned to be part of Harry's practice. In fact, he was almost explicitly not wanted on the show. How did he become Australia's most famous dog, starting from that position?
That is so true. When I left, so I was poached from Totally Wild. I was working on a kids show, and Toby was this tiny little puppy, and I was doing all this training with him, and I was using him. He was a strategic move for me in that I needed to come up with more stories all the time for Totally Wild. I had to come up with 4 stories a week, and I was running out of stories. So I'll get a puppy, and I did all this research. So I've been training him up and teaching him tricks and having fun, and then I got the dream call to do a screen test for Channel 7 with Dr. Harry, and then I got the gig, which was great. And I was like, I can bring my dog. And they're like, we've got the Border Collie, we've got Rosie, we don't need another dog. And then I had to I'd sort of sneak him in. I was like pushing him in I'm going to bring him in. And then after probably it was a series, I think the first series, suddenly he just became part of the cast, and then he kind of really got to shine. And I think what happened with that was Harry was very busy as the working vet, and I was Harry's sidekick, and Toby was my sidekick. And so it all kind of fell into place.
How was the process for you? You talked about Toby's death earlier. He was such a big part of your identity at that point, and certainly your public identity. How did you manage that transition from being Dr. Katrina and Toby on Harry's practice to Harry's practice ending, Toby not being here, and sort of that next chapter of your life?
That was one of the hardest things, and still is one of the hardest things, because I was so used to turning up to anywhere and everyone would talk to the dog, and the dog would make everyone happy, and the dog would like Chili did when I walked in today. You walk in and you can see the power of the pets, and I still push very much. I'll say, bring the dog, and it just softens it up. If I'm doing public speaking, softens it up. So I was so used to having him, and it would take away the nerves. We were talking before about, do you get nervous and things? Well, I'd have the dog and it wouldn't matter because everyone was worried about the dog, and then by the time you were presenting or whatever, you didn't notice.
Interesting.
And he was also calming. So I really struggled. I've struggled a lot with it, right through really, because you feel like I don't have the same thing to offer anymore. I don't have that. Everyone wants Toby. And look, Chili, he's amazing, and I do a lot with him, but life is different now because a lot of what I do is creating social media content, and a lot of that's solo, and it's not as fun as getting out and about with him.
We'll get into your sort of next chapter of content shortly. I'd like to go to photos. We've got the mementos set up. I know you've got your photo album here. Take us through some of the photos that you'd want displayed on your funeral table.
There's so many photo albums, and I've stopped. I haven't printed a photo since I did this run of photo albums. So my daughter was little, and I think I stopped it. I think she was 2 or 3. And you know what's so ridiculous? I used to get these albums because they were so great for storing photos, and then they stopped making them as well. Right. So that one, that's the moment. That is the moment.
That is the moment.
The moment I picked that dog, right?
Wow.
So, and he chose me. He followed me around, that little puppy, and he just kept sitting right next to my foot. And then he'd go up, the camera guy was filming him because we filmed the whole thing, and he kept going up to the camera, and then he'd come back and he'd sit next to me, and we're like, that's the one.
That's the dog.
And this one, because I talk a lot about the dog, and I should talk about my beautiful daughter as well.
You do have a daughter.
I do have a daughter. I wouldn't be allowed to show you any photos of her now, though, because she's 17.
At what age would she cap you? Baby photos
probably
fine?
Baby photos and little. I mean, I don't even know about this one. That's the last ever photo that I got with Toby. You can see how old he is there.
Yeah, wow.
And what was really strange, Border Collies can do really, really, really well, and then all of a sudden they will sort of just suddenly go on. So he was still working with me at up to 12 and still looked great. And then after about that age, he started, he was getting quite grey and he was slowing down. But in that last little period, people would visibly be like they'd walking down the street and people were like, oh, is that Toby? That would really upset me. And when you're living with it, you don't realise as much either.
But when somebody points it out, it sort of creates that new, fresh set of emotions. Yeah,
and I saw it happened recently with a friend's dog, and I saw his dog. I hadn't seen her for a while, and I was like, gosh, I was so shocked because their lives are so much shorter. So when they're seniors, it goes so quickly. So that was the last one of Tobes. And then Yeah, these ones are really cute to me too. This is my first time really. I went away. My daughter was like this tiny weeny baby.
Oh, cute.
And when you first have a baby, and I've only had the one, I think you just spend the whole first, even though you're really tired, you're just amazed at yourself or how you've done this. And you know everyone else has done it.
Yeah. And you know you're actually not that special, but in the moment, just something feels like, I'm fucking amazing at this.
Like, we made this. She was like, what do we do with it? And so she was this tiny little thing, and I can't even remember why I got, it was a little job or photo shoot or something. I got to go to Hayman Island with a friend. It was beautiful, and I was very, very lucky. Didn't sleep much because she was up all night. But, yeah, it was they were really sweet. But in here, gosh, I've got Toby all the way through in here.
Thanks for bringing those in. The next part of the questionnaire is around highlight reels. At some point on the funeral, your life will be played out in pictures and stories and videos on screen. If there was a single moment, a single highlight that you'd want everyone to relive with you, what would it be?
I probably touched on that before, but we have it on video. The story when I picked Toby as a puppy, and everyone will relate because that picking him as a puppy changed my whole career path, really, because I may have gone on and had that television show, but I wouldn't have had such an amazing dog and done books and all of those things. So that would be one moment. I imagine just doing flashbacks of some of the crazy experiences. Like we did some amazing things when I was at Channel 7. I was so lucky. I was watching the Olympics thinking because I was at Channel 7 when we had Olympics 2000. So we were so spoiled. We got to be right on the ground with all of it. So flashbacks like that. But importantly, obviously my nearest and dearest and my friends, I've got a core group of really great friends. We've had some really amazing adventures and just fun. And so I just would do flashback highlights, lots of fun photos of, wig parties and things like that.
I think many people would be surprised that you're one for wig parties and fancy dress parties. Like, how else is Dr. Katrina, the real life person, different from the public persona of you?
That's funny. Well, there's no one really does that many fancy dress parties anymore. There are a few, but it's not as common. I don't think people. I present very much as. I always have been very girl next door, very responsible, and I am. I'm very responsible and very responsible in my messaging, but it doesn't mean I don't like to have a laugh, and I'm not, I can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Sarcastic. I don't know. I just think you can't get through life without laughing. There's no point in being serious. So you've got to find the humour in every situation. And that's the only way I get through. So with my friends, if we're having a crap time, we will try and find something to laugh. So it might be sending silly videos or funny memes or whatever. And I don't think many people know that, just that side of me. The rest of it is what you see, of course.
Of course.
Exactly what you see.
While we're on the topic of moments, and not to end this section on a negative, but two-part question, how do you deal with regret generally? And is there any particular moments in your life, your career or your life generally, where you'd like a do-over?
That's a really good question. And I have to say that I am working really, really hard on not having regret, because regret takes you down. And I can have regrets about certain things. Should I have done certain things a different way? There were some opportunities that I had that I wish I'd taken. There was a few moments. There's a few doors. I say to people, I say to my daughter too, if there's a little tiny crack in a door, you should open it for an opportunity. So there's a few opportunities, and I just think you don't know when you go through that door, right? But you can't have regrets. You can't look back. You get to this point in life and you go, I could regret all of these things, but I can't. So I can only look forward and shape the life I have now. So I'm not going to give you a proper answer to that one.
That's a great answer. The answer is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, I work really hard on it, because when you can go back. You can go back on financial decisions and all of these things that I should have done this, I should have done that. But what does it get you? You can't change it. Have you always been
this pragmatic, or is this something that you've learnt over time as you've dwelt on decisions and realised you can't change it and moved on?
I've dwelt too much in the past, and now I've just gone, life is too short to dwell. You can only change what's going ahead of you. And as we get to this age, as you realise you've got less days here than you had, and we also, I think, as you get older and lose more people, you realise anything can happen at any time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
What is the point? And so whilst, yes, I think, there's some things that's like, no, and I'm really learning to blanket and go forward. That's my big thing I've been working on. So, yeah, no regrets.
Go forward, no regrets. Let's move on to eulogy. What do you hope people say about you?
I hope that in some way we talk about animals. This is what makes me teary, because I really do hope that I've had it's making me cry, that I've had an impact on the lives of some animals, and that more animals are maybe understood, more pets are understood, and they're having a better life as a result. I feel like I don't do as much these days as I used to, and I get a bit upset about that. So I am actually trying to do a little bit more work in the animal charities and what have you, that kind of vibe. But I do hope that in some way we can reflect and go, there are animals that are better off for knowing me. I hope that kindness comes through, particularly with animals. I feel like we should treat all animals with kindness. That's why I don't eat animals, because I just think I can't look these animals in the eye knowing the relationships that I have with my pets, and all animals are, animals. So I hope that comes through, and then I just hope it's fond memories of fun times shared.
You must be proud of the impact you've had now. Like, there's lots of content creators, lots of vets with the public presence, but in the 90s and 2000s, like, you and Dr. Harry were it. You were the pet educators, and you probably inspired, my sister being one of them, thousands upon thousands of people to go into vet nursing or veterinary science. You must look back and think, shit, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, because at the time I was proud of it. At the time I was, but then as you get further away, because I feel like I could look back at that and go, yeah, that was a magical moment, but I don't feel at this moment in time that I'm doing as much. And I don't, once you've had that satisfaction and you don't quite have it, I don't have it the same. And I think a lot of that is because I'm really, really busy with work, but a lot of it is working with myself. So we were talking about this before. A lot of it is creating content for social media, for various brands or various projects, or spreading the message. But these days, you don't go out. You're not on the ground with people as much. I do a lot of events. The events are quite rewarding because I do get that one-on-one experience. I've got a big one coming up. So I don't feel that way as much. So it's nice. Thank you for saying that. I feel like back in those days, yes, we had an impact, but do I now? It's very flooded. There's a lot of people out there doing what we used to do.
Last question. What do you want your epitaph to be?
Following the sun.
Is that literal or metaphorical?
Oh, look, I actually, the whole thing, anything to do with the sun, but I will let my friends decide what they put on there. But I think that they would fall on that. And I hope that's where I am.
What lessons do you hope you left your daughter?
Life owes you nothing, right? Life owes you nothing. You make your own life. You make your decisions. Take any opportunity that comes. Work hard. Be kind. And before you do anything, before you have interactions with people, if you're upset or whatever it might be, please be empathetic and listen.
What a perfect place to leave it, Katrina. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for being so open. I hope your funeral is many, 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 many years from now.
Thank you.
But when it happens, it sounds like it'll be a cracker. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks so much. It's been lovely chatting. Thank you.